Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I want to welcome everyone to meeting number 17 of the Government Management Committee. I would like to welcome our newest members, Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Cole, and thank everybody for attending today. For those in the room with us, there's a screen at the back behind that pillar that provides real-time updates concerning where we are in the agenda and what's going to be coming up next on the agenda. And for those of you that are sitting on the edge of your seats listening at home, you can follow the agenda and debate on your computer, tablet, or smartphone at www.toronto.ca/council. And the Government Management Committee would also gratefully acknowledge its meeting on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, and home to many diverse Indigenous peoples. And first order business, so the deputation list is the standard green sheet before you. There's some correspondence from Councillor Kelly and Councillor McMahon on an item that they would like to introduce when we've gone through the agenda. At this point, I'm going to ask if there's any declarations of interest under the Ontario Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. I need a motion to confirm the minutes of November 14th, 2016. Yep. So Councillor Davis, all in favor? Approved. I told you about the speakers list and the communications. We'll go through the agenda. 17.1 is the election of the Vice Chair of the Government Management Committee. Do you want to do that now? Sorry, I have a cheat sheet for that. Are there any nominations for Vice Chair of the Government Management Committee? Councillor Cole.
Can I, Mr. Chair, can I nominate Councillor Vince Crisanti?
We will take Councillor Crisanti as the first nominee. Are there any other nominees? Seeing no further nominations, the nominations are considered closed. Councillor Crisanti is the only nominee. I declare Councillor Crisanti elected as Vice Chair of the Government Management Committee for a term of office starting today and ending on November 30th, 2018, or until a successor is appointed. Councillor Crisanti, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
All right, all in favor of Councillor Crisanti? Carried. Congratulations, Councillor Crisanti. Going through the agenda, GM 17.2, 1900 Dundas Street West, designation of a portion of the premises as a municipal capital facility.
I'll hold that. Unless someone else.
Holding number 2?
2, yeah.
Okay. Number 3, 2340 Dundas Street West, designation of a portion of the premises as the municipal capital facility.
I'll move staff recommendations.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, is this item?
Number 3.
No, I'm going to hold that as well. Sorry, 2 and 3.
All right. Number 4, we have a deputation, update on the implementation of the social assistance management system in Toronto. Number 5 is the amendment to the UAP/Napa Auto Parts contract, and there's a deputant on that one as well. Number 6 is the blanket contract amendment for Mr. Safety Soft Shoes Incorporated for the supply and fitting of various safety footwear.
I'll move adoption of the staff recommendation.
Councillor Davis is moving adoption. All in favor of the recommendations? Carried. Number 7, amendment to purchase order number 6042673, construction of the Emergency Medical Services Multifunction Station at 1300 Wilson Avenue.
I'll move adoption.
Councillor Davis is moving adoption. All in favor? Carried. Sorry, number 8, additional reporting on contracts awarded during the 2016 summer recess period. Councillor Davis is holding number 8. Number 9, transfer of 2530 Gerrard Street East to Build Toronto. Does anybody want to move the recommendations? Councillor Cole is moving the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. 17.10, expropriation of 1229 Ellesmere Road. Councillor Cole is moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 11, expropriation of part of 228 to 230 Queens Quay West and part of the lands of the rear of 250 to 270 Queens Quay West for the reconstruction of the York Bay Yonge off-ramp for the FG Gardner Expressway. Councillor Davis is moving adoption of the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 12, purchase of the stratified interest at 11 Wellesley Street West. Councillor Crisanti is moving adoption. All in favor of the recommendations? Carried. Number 13, there's a deputation, Toronto Police Services Board Administrative Penalty System for parking violations. Number 14, the French Language Advisory Committee drafting a work plan for 2016 to 2018.
I'll move adoption.
Councillor Davis is moving adoption of the recommendations.
Committee recommendations. Yeah.
Sorry?
I'm moving adoption of the committee recommendations.
Yes. All in favor? Carried. Number 15, feasibility of the city-produced laneway street signs for sale, and we have a deputation on that. And you have a letter before us from Councillor McMahon and Councillor Kelly. I need a motion to introduce that. Councillor Cole, motion to introduce. All in favor? Does anybody want to hold this?
I do.
Or we can vote on it?
No, there isn't a recommendation here, so it needs
For a
to
report
be-
back.
We're requesting a report back.
Yes.
But there isn't a motion here, so somebody needs to move a motion.
Okay. Okay. Any questions of the mover? Next quarter? Yeah. This quarter? This quarter. Okay. Councillor Davis, do you have a question of the mover?
This is the right committee to deal with it because it's the polling requirements, or should maybe it should say in consultation with transportation services. I'm not sure that the polling requirements are exactly the same for everything. I'm just not sure. I know that the clerk's department does the polling. Does that mean the policy related to this matter is also within the clerk's jurisdiction?
It's an administrative function. The clerk's office is responsible for the process, and Helen Smith is here.
It's the clerk.
Just answer. Yep, I'm fine.
Mr. Chair, the process for the polling is a function of the City Clerk's office, an administrative service, so it is appropriate before the Government Management Committee.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay, so we're going to go to the deputation list first. So the first item we're going to hear deputants from is GM 17.4, updated on the implementation of the Social Assistance Management System in Toronto, or as we all know it, SAMS. And the speaker is Mr. Tim McGuire. You don't look like Tim McGuire.
No, obviously, I'm not Tim McGuire. I apologize with the shift of the committee meeting. He's unable to join us at this moment. Of course, he could walk in at any minute, and then we will replace each other. But I'll try to provide the comments on his behalf as best to my ability. So we have some concerns around SAMS, some ongoing concerns that I think are mirrored by the city's report. We understand that there is continued administrative burden due to SAMS, and that originally the province had provided some funding and some resources to deal with that administrative burden. The report that you have before you now recognizes that that administrative burden still stands with the city, but says that we're near meeting the backlog created by that administrative burden. We have some concerns that that may not be fully the case. For example, in the report, it talks about service plans achieved on a monthly basis, how many service plans we're able to process on a monthly basis. It suggests that we've been able to improve the amount of service plans we achieve on a monthly basis by 30% from 2015 to 2016. That still puts us 30% below our pre-SAMS levels. And you have to remember that these service plans provide services and supports to the most vulnerable in our communities. So it's absolutely essential that we do everything we can to bring SAMS to bring our services with the advent of SAMS into the type of service level we had prior to SAMS at the very, very least. Another concern is how long it takes to provide the processing of an application. We know that in 2015, I think it was something like 3 times the length of time that someone had to sit on the phone with one of our case managers in order to go through an application. That's a very, very long time. We're unsure with this report whether or not we've been able to meet the service standard of 15 minutes that was in 2014 what was acceptable, compared to the service standard that we were hitting in 2015 with SAMS at about 45 minutes. And there are a number of these instances that I could bring out. What I would suggest is that you need a little more information to understand whether or not in this city budget process we should be getting rid of 66 positions, temporary positions that were brought in 2016 to help deal with the burdensome issues of SAMS. You're not at the level that you were hitting pre-SAMS, and this is a service that is absolutely essential to the most vulnerable people in our community. So we suggest that you take a more thoughtful approach in looking at this report and consider what the real implications are for those people who are in our communities that are most vulnerable. Now, seeing as I've got about 2.5 minutes left, I'm hoping, by your leave, Councillor Ainslie, if I could actually talk about the second item as well that Tim is here to depute on, and that way I think we save everyone time.
Sure. Is that okay with the members? Yep. Go right ahead, Ms. Miller.
Okay. So on the issue of the NAPA contract that's in front of you, I think that's 17.5. We have great concerns about this as well. This is a service that was originally done in-house until about 2011. It was then contracted out, and there's been concerns with that contract that have been highlighted by the Auditor General, been highlighted by the city's own external consultants, Mercury Associates, issues around cost overruns, around delay in parts delivery, and those issues were supposed to be dealt with within this new RFP that was put out to tender. The new RFP, however, has not been able to provide the city with a successful bidder. There is no company out there right now that can meet the standards of service that you wish for the City of Toronto, the standards of service that would solve the issues brought by the Auditor General, solve some of the issues brought by Mercury Associates. So to us, this seems like an opportunity to explore bringing this service back in-house, to see whether or not it's possible to provide for parts management and coordination in-house in a way that addresses the issues that have come to light in your external delivery. And that's what we would ask. We would ask that the issue be treated fairly and objectively, that the city move forward on its promise that it made in its budget direction to look at bringing services back in-house when its out-of-house service delivery wasn't meeting its objectives. And that seems to be the case here. And with that, I'll conclude the comments.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Davis?
So on the first report, which was the implementation of SAMS, you're suggesting that there was a service standard in 2015, and that service standard, we still aren't, we're not meeting it now?
There's a number of service standards that were actually brought forward in the 2015 report that staff presented on the impacts of SAMS, where they had set the levels of service they were able to meet pre-SAMS in 2014. This included the amount of service plans they were able to process within a given month. By the numbers I have in front of me, the pre-SAMS level for service plans was about 18,000 service plans that were being processed per month. I think the 2016 number brings them up. If it was 11,000 and they improved by 30%, brings them up around 14,000, 15,000. So we're still pretty far behind where we were in pre-SAMS levels. There's a number of other instances where that also could be the case. Referrals to employment programs is also uncertain as to whether that's up to pre-SAMS levels. Whether or not, see, there's Tim now, whether or not we considered these service standards that we want to continue meeting, or whether or not staff is suggesting that we set new standards that are lower than what we had pre-SAMS. That's uncertain. I don't know what exactly is being reflected here. But if we're looking to meet the same levels of service that we had prior to SAMS, we're not there yet. That is clear.
Okay, so you're also saying that there are 60 jobs that were added. This is, I think, 66 temporary caseworkers were added. Okay, it was one-time funding. They were added. So the one-time funding then, is that the one-time funding from the province?
The province did provide one-time funding, I think, over a 2-year period of time, but I admit that I don't have the exact detail in front of me. Originally, the amount of staff that had been brought in was over 90 staff that had been brought in to help with the increased administrative burden of SAMS and some backlogs that were created by SAMS. Right now, the budget, as going forward, the proposed budget, deletes 66 of those and takes another 29 of those and puts them into a base budget. We're unsure what those 29 will do. We're not sure if they're dedicated to deal with the increased burden of SAMS or whether or not they're expected to also take on other duties, such as be caseworkers. That's also unclear to us. There's a lot of things about this, unfortunately, that are a bit unclear. And because SAMS has been such a problem and drawn such issues, then...
Okay, so it seems to say there's also ongoing incremental costs associated with SAMS. Okay, I'll ask some questions of staff, but I did want to ask on the other report, which has to do with the, where is it? 17.5. So what you're saying is that there were provisions in the new contract that relate to recommendations from the Auditor General that had to do with service standards, and that when this call went out, they couldn't be met.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what we're saying. Both the Auditor General and the Mercury Associates report had a number of recommendations about how the contract could be improved in order to solve many of the issues that we saw. Those were put into the RFP, and there has been no successful bidder.
So, and I'm sure Katrina has articulated this already, we suggest the city should be spending that time and looking at where there was a more successful model in terms of buying parts and quality and pricing, and that was directly delivered. It used to be the job of public employees to buy parts on quality and price and in the public interest. And the city has spent some years now looking at options in terms of this being provided by the private sector, and it's the official policy of council to look at insourcing where outsourcing has not met the needs of the city. So if there's some other reason for doing this, then providing the best service, be clear about what that is, but the city has spent a lot of time, money, and energy trying to prove the private sector project right. It's time to give the public sector project, which was working for a number of years and could have been tweaked internally, to do that. A lot of time, money, and energy can be wasted for another 6 months looking at trying to make the private sector model successful, but where it's recognized there have been a number of concerns, see what it would cost and model it to bring it in-house.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Davis. Any other questions of the deputies? Seeing none? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll start with number 4. Are there any questions of staff? Counselor Davis?
So, Daryl.
Me.
So, have we been able to move to the same service standards that we had before the introduction of SAMS?
First of all, Councillor, I'd like to point out that the caseload is down significantly from the previous comparison. It's over 6,000. It's gone down. So on the service planning, which was referenced in the deputation, we are about 20%. We were 19%, I think, prior to SAM's implementation. So we're very close on that. The length of time to complete an application for a 1F, as an example, is down about 40% to 50% from what it was, so it's still slightly higher. We do acknowledge and agree that SAMS is a more intensive system that needs to capture more information, and as such requires more staff time looking at that system.
So the province paid one-time costs, which was intended to, I gather, support the implementation. But it sounds as though there are still incremental costs that will be ongoing unless there are fundamental changes. Is that a fair?
That's correct, Councillor. The province provided us with $2.9 million in pre-SAMS implementation funding for training and to do data cleanup, as it were. That lasted from January 1st, 2014 to March 2015. They have not provided 100% dedicated SAMS funding since. We did put, I think as the deputant noted, we have moved 25 staff positions into our base budget in recognition of the ongoing need to support SAMS and the impact of SAMS.
Okay, so there's 25 positions have been added. Now, the actual cost of social assistance has been uploaded.
The actual cost of the benefits, Councillor, and the
benefits.
employment-related benefits.
Almost.
Yes, and it will be in 2018, it will be 100% uploaded.
But we are still cost-sharing 50/50 on the administrative costs?
That is correct, Councillor, up to the provincial cap on program delivery.
And is it capturing 50% of the costs? What the
It is
province-
capturing the 50%, as we noted in the report. 50% of the 25 staff, $875,000, is actually funded by the province, and the other $875,000 is funded by the city.
So they are matching 50/50. And is there inflation built into the new formula?
No, there is no inflation escalator built into the funding formula.
So next year, when salaries go up, our 50/50 will automatically be skewed, assuming we match our collective agreements?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, Councillor. As inflation increases our costs, it is pressure on the funding cap.
Well, we should be asking for inflation to cover not just the incremental and increased costs of SAMS, but also for the cost of living increases associated with administration. Have we asked for that?
We have put that has been a subject that has been in every budget analyst notes, as well as brought forward in the budget process. So it has been something that has been identified. And again, this funding formula was first put in place in April 2011. So it's a 6-year-old funding formula that's actually not been reviewed since its implementation.
So could we have a report directly to council to ask for an updated cost of the incremental costs plus the inflation and a position to the province on this? I don't know that we've taken a position that I'm aware of.
So,
Yes?
I'm fine if you want to.
That would be,
I'm sorry.
yeah? Okay, I will move that then. Thank you.
Sorry, other questions of staff? Sorry, Councillor Davis, you're going to move a motion?
Yes, I am, but
Okay. We can hold this item down while you're
Great.
writing your motion if you like.
thank you.
Okay, so, sorry, does anybody else want to speak to this item? Councillor Davis wants to move a motion on this item. She's just drafting it up, so we're going to hold this item down and move to number 5. So we've had our deputant. Is there any questions of staff on number 5? So it's the United Auto Parts contract.
Should we go on this one?
Yeah, Councillor Davis is writing motion number 4. Councillor Crisanti, you have questions of staff on number 5?
Yeah, just one, I believe.
Okay.
It says on page 7, third paragraph, that it was a failed RFP. Could you just please elaborate on what happened there and what you mean by a failed RFP?
Through the chair, the RFP closed and received 2 proposals. The submissions were being evaluated when it was determined that in one of the proposals, the proponent had provided pricing information in their technical envelope, which is, we've separated the RFP was based on 2 envelope systems such that pricing had to be only in the cost of services proposal. So they were declared non-compliant for that reason. The second proponent went through the technical proposal, but when we opened up the cost envelope, they've actually qualified their proposal and said their proposal was based on changes to the terms and conditions, which they didn't identify during the question and answer period when the call was out in the street. And so they were declared non-compliant for qualifying their proposal. So it wasn't as if those 2 proponents couldn't have done the work. They unfortunately added items into their proposal that was against the rules as was set out.
And there were only the 2?
In the end, we only had 2 submitted. We had a third proponent that we thought was going to submit. After the RFP closed and they didn't provide a proposal, we inquired with them about why and the particular reason. They're from a company that deals in the United States, and they're very concerned about the price adjustment category that we had put in there, and they thought it would be a risk, so they chose not to bid.
So when do you plan to go back out for a new RFP?
Through the chair, we've actually conducted debriefings with the 3 proponents to understand what happened, and we're taking those lessons and we're applying them to develop the call now. We're also considering another potential option in terms of piggybacking on a joint purchasing group. But we hope to have it out shortly, and perhaps Lloyd can.
So then, for those reasons, you need an extension of, what are you recommending, maximum? The existing contract?
Through the chair, the extension that we're asking for is 1 year, and it's to allow time for the new RFP to get out, come back, get evaluated, and should the successful proponent be different than the current one, we need time to work on the implementation for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions of staff? Councillor Davis?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear those questions. I was writing. I may ask the same questions. Indulge me if.
Councillor Crisanti
Okay.
just asked clarification of why the bids that were submitted failed.
Okay, and did it relate to some of the new provisions that were put into the RFP that weren't there before?
Through the chair, no, there were errors on part of the proponent by one introduced costing information in the technical envelope, which was against the rules of the call, and the other one qualified their bid so that the terms and conditions that we had put out there, they didn't agree to them, and so they qualified their bid and were declared non-compliant as a result. It wasn't based on the new requirements added into the RFP.
Okay. One of the things that your report says, though, in the next 6 months, you're going to look at all options. Just wondering what all viable options means.
Through the chair, another potential option is looking at a national purchasing group to see whether it makes sense to leverage their contract. It's like piggybacking off the province. We're examining whether it would be cost effective and make sense for the requirements for fleet. Otherwise, we've taken the information through debriefings we've had with the 3 proponents that were interested in the 2 that submitted to the last RFP to learn more and to build that into the next RFP if we're going to go back out.
You went back and did more soundings, even though debriefing, even though the only difficulty was they put things in the wrong envelopes? What did you learn from that then?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we did. After the RFP closed, we went back and met with all of the proponents, even one that did not submit a bid that has to date only done business in the United States. And they were actually very informative. The one group that did not submit, again, they have excellent potential with respect to providing this service. So there was a lot of lessons learned that we want to incorporate to further refine the RFP when we go out again.
Okay, so one of the, I think at the end of the report, it says the job quality assessment tool, you will use it if it is completed. Is there an indication that it will not be completed in 6 months?
Through the chair, at the time we were writing this report, we just finished the December, or the last GMC, where it was brought up with respect to custodial, and we were mindful of that tool being developed. So we just want to be aware that if the tool gets developed and approved by council by June, July, as the direction has been from GMC and council, that if we haven't already issued the RFP, we'll try to build whatever the tool is into it as appropriate.
Okay.
So
And it's
I feel it's a lot of guessing of what it may end up being at this point.
And it's anticipated to be back in Q2. So is there, okay. Is there a way to build that into the RFP to say that this is going to be required, or even if it's not specified at the time?
Well, I think the challenge would be to indicate that it will apply when we don't understand the parameters that it will be used.
Okay. When you say explore all viable options, there really are two functions here. One is parts and one is inventory management. And my understanding is we used to do these things separately. Is there a way to do it so that we can still maintain some in-house management that would still ensure that we have some ongoing and good jobs here?
Through the chair, that was part of what we looked at as progressing through this, such as was spoken to previously, the parts being provided in-house in 2011 and before. And we did an assessment on that, looking at that and the costs of managing that inventory, the costs of carrying that inventory, and the systems, so IT systems and other systems that would have to go with that. There is still, based on analysis and data that we've gathered, a savings to the city of providing with an external model, and then of the external models, there are a couple of options there which can only be evaluated through the outsource based on the successful proponent.
Is there any way in the 6-month period to have any further discussions? You're required under the collective agreement, I believe, to have discussions. Is that right? With the union, this is a new contract call? No?
Through the chair, we were just maintaining the same process that already
No, I mean in
exists.
6 months, you're going to put out another call.
Yeah.
This is an extension of the existing. So
Last
you have
question, Councillor.
obligations still to talk to the union before the next contract?
We can, through the chair, we can check with labor relations on that.
Or even not willingness to chat with them? Okay, thank you.
Speakers on this item? Somebody want to move the recommendations? Councillor Crisanti is moving the staff recommendations.
I don't think there's any option to be able to, other than to extend, because right now we had an unsuccessful call. I think this may be the second unsuccessful call. Is that correct? No, first unsuccessful call. And I just think that one of the difficulties has been that we have not put in place the recommendations that could have improved the in-house service. And I still regret that once again, the city, while it purports to talk about social procurement and it purports to talk about good jobs, is proposing to extend a contract to a massive corporation instead of potentially some small providers. Secondly, that it is contracting out good jobs. I hope that we get the quality, job quality index before we actually undertake this other round of contracting out. And because I just think it's completely inappropriate, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. So we have the recommendations on the floor. All in favor of the recommendations? Opposed? Okay. And we're going to go back to number 4. Councillor Davis, you have a motion?
Yes, I haven't quite seen it. There was a suggestion, a smart one, I think, made to refer to the general manager and have a report back here instead of a report directly to council. Is that better? With an update on the additional incremental ongoing costs associated with the implementation. Daryl, you haven't seen this, so in the middle of my speech, I'm looking at you. On the additional incremental ongoing costs associated with the implementation of SAMS, including the inflationary increase of administration costs, and any recommendations for changes to the provincial funding formula. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Then I will move that motion. The one thing that's left to us, and we have to give credit to the provincial government for uploading the costs of social assistance. But what we're left with is the administrative costs. They introduced a system that injured workers because there were so many. I know from being the chair of the Occupational Health and Safety Committee that we had it's just skyrocketing of repetitive strain injuries because of the number of clicks, I understand, that were required to actually introduce and process applications, and there are still significant problems with the system. And I do think that those costs we are absorbing, as well as inflation costs. And what we will find ourselves with is 5 years from now, somebody saying, whoa, we have a big gap between the 50-50 cost sharing that's supposed to be here because there was no inflation built into that agreement. And we need to be saying clearly to them now, this has got to get fixed, or we will find ourselves at a 65-35 in no time. And that's why I suggest we get a really clear picture of what these extra costs are, and at the next meeting.
At the next
I think at the next meeting.
We weren't sure on that.
Oh, April's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions of the mover? Seeing none. Any other speakers on this item? No? Okay. All in favor of the referral? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay. We are now on number 13, Toronto Police Services Board Administrative Penalty System parking violations, and we have one deputant, Derek Moran. Where's Derek? There he is. Thanks for coming back, Derek. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
I got an earful online last time I was here regarding this item because I didn't even bother to say this, so just to be clear, I object to this item regarding the administrative penalty system, and I do not approve of this administrative penalty system as stripping away one's right to have their day in court to face their accuser in front of an impartial, neutral arbiter, a judge, a justice of the peace, a supernumerary, not a screening officer who will be an employee of the City of Toronto, just like the prosecutor will be, stripping away one's right to have their day in court to face their accuser in front of an impartial, neutral arbiter is not in the public's interest, no matter what any way anyone spends it. I just realized something that, everything that I got written here, I got a lot crammed onto one page, that I buried the lead at the very bottom, and I want to make sure I don't run out of time, so I'm just going to get my main message out there, which is, just so everyone's clear, the Attorney General, the Government of Ontario, said no to this administrative penalty system. They decided against this administrative penalty system. Last time I was here, I mentioned that Alison Jones of the Canadian Press even reported last May that the Attorney General, Government of Ontario, had decided against and said no to this administrative penalty system. Alison Jones of the Canadian Press also had a quote from Attorney General spokeswoman Jenna Manone saying, as such, we decided against the administrative penalty system. We're going to keep things the way they are and find more efficiencies that way. And you're probably all wondering, well, if that's the case, then why is the City of Toronto going ahead and still doing this? And the only thing I can think of is if you've ever actually met Attorney General Yasser Naqvi, like I have, and spoken to him twice, he is just the most super nice guy. And he's relatively new. He took over from Madeleine Mayer recently. So I can only assume that the City of Toronto is just trying to test his resolve and see if he's a pushover. So I guess we're all going to find out. As I mentioned, actually, before Tim leaves, I got to speak to him briefly in the hallway and was telling him about how I've spoken to this item twice at the Toronto Police Services Board. Just so you all know, your colleague, Councillor Chin Lee, the first time I spoke about this, I just about fell off my chair because I thought he was going to ask me a question. Nobody ever asked me questions. He turned to me and made sure that everyone saw and said to me, I just want to thank you for bringing this issue up to the board, because who are the three councillors that voted against this when I went to City Council? It was Councillor Lee, Councillor Perks, and the third one was Councillor Ainsley. I told you at the Toronto Police Services Board during the summer, you're a good man, Councillor Ainsley. What I also mentioned to Tim was, however, I explained to the Toronto Police Services Board how this is unconstitutional. It goes against the rule of law mentioned at the very beginning of the Constitution. This is also unconstitutional as it goes against the principles of fundamental justice mentioned in the Constitution. I told the Toronto Police Services Board also, I can't think of the Supreme Court case off the top of my head right now, but it dealt with what that principles of fundamental justice actually means in the Constitution. And that court case based upon what's called a maxim of law that says no one shall be both judge and party in their own cause. So I explained to Tim and his colleague, who's not here right now, as it stands right now, you go to court, there is a judge, justice, who's taken an oath to the Queen or whoever to be fair and independent, impartial. I don't care about this side, I don't care about the city's prosecutor, I'm just here to be a disinterested, impartial, neutral arbiter. The way it's being set up now is you go to this kangaroo court, I'll call it, and I'll be here, there'll be the city prosecutor here, and then there'll be a screening officer, except the screening officer and the city prosecutor are both employees of the City of Toronto. And like I said, there's that maxim of law that says, you can't go and wear both caps at once. So, I mean, I can't wait to see how this works out because, the whole transformational task force is coming up, and I just want to thank Chair Andy Pringle for bouncing this back here so I can try and get, some semblance of, common sense through to everyone here, and that's my time.
Any questions of the deputy? Nope, seeing them. Thank you very much. Okay, questions of staff on this? No questions of staff? Speakers? Somebody to move the recommendation for receipt? Yes, receipt. Councillor Crisanti, moving receipt. All in favor? Carried.
To the top.
Our next item we have a deputy on is number 15, feasibility of city-produced laneway and street signs for sale. Mr. Glavich.
When does the final report come? Vince, when is the task force?
Good afternoon, Mr. Glavich. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Just so you all know, I would have voted for Councillor Davis as vice chair. She wished me happy birthday, and like that certain somebody who didn't. You made me cry. Thank you. It's a bit too late, but. Okay, I think this is a wonderful request from Councillor McMahon. I personally, I like those signs. I want them. It's the City of Toronto does a horrible job in memorabilia. Cities around the world have them. The Toronto Public Library had a T-shirt for $35. Nobody's going to buy a T-shirt for $35. I did, but I know. But that's it. The City of Toronto, the closest thing is Rob Ford bobbleheads. And since you guys didn't get my what I said last time about Rob Rossini bobbleheads, there's nothing else in here. There is.
I only have so many.
Something if the people request a name, they get a mini sign or something like that. If it goes in the City of Toronto, is it going to be the full size or the mini ones? You know, I'd be picking the full street lanes. You know, there's one in Carlton and Parliament called Dr. O Lane. I want that one. That's on top of my list. I have a whole list of about 20. You know, people want them, and hopefully it's going to be the full size. Obviously, hopefully it's going. The city is not going to overprice this. You know, there's more than T-shirts, hats, scarves, gloves, and all that crap. You know, all that stuff. Sorry, I want. One of these signs, you know, and I want also the street sign where I grew up in North York before moving to Scarborough. You know, and it's a great idea. Can't you stay in after 2018? I know you're leaving. You make good ideas. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Glavich. Any questions of the deputant? Seeing none. And while I have you, Mr. Glavich, and facilities staff are here, maybe you'd like to explain to everybody why you have headphones on. For their benefit too. Microphone. Your microphone. Miroslav, microphone.
Sorry. FM transmitter, it helps for hard of hearing people. On the suburbs, on the community councils, they don't have this. This helps hard of hearing people. These are noise cancellation headphones. People bring whatever. It helps hard of hearing people with the whole AODA thing. Makes it better. Just the same thing if you guys are going to make that door accessible with a push button to open it. Hard of hearing. It's all considered.
And do we make those available to the general public, or how did you get one?
I asked him. I found out last executive committee meeting. There's no information on the city website about it available.
One or two.
He's wonderful right there.
Thank you very much. Questions of staff on this item? Sorry, Councillor McMahon, did you have questions of staff on this item? Okay, so we'll bring this into committee. Are there questions of staff? I can give you that leeway. Do you have a question of the mover?
I do. I just want to understand the proposal, because the motion itself says selling official Toronto laneways, producing and selling official Toronto laneway signs. Sounds like we're selling the official laneway signs, but actually the content of your motion says you're selling the replica, proposals to sell the replica little ones. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I think what the official was officially named. I don't think it meant the original sign.
Maybe with an amendment that says official replica or something, whatever they're called. I don't know if anyone's here from Trans.
Yeah, I think staff knew what this is about, but.
Like a Toronto stamp of approval official.
Official Toronto, or selling replicas of the official. It's just standing alone, which it will be, sounds like it's selling. So I would just move an amendment selling replica official Toronto laneway signs. But maybe if
I mean, I don't know what they technically call them, but they're the ones that they give out at a laneway naming ceremony. They give out 2, they used to give out 3, now it's down to 2 versions of the original.
Oh,
So
they're
that's
big?
what it
I
was.
thought they were little.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. On plastic, right. Right, right.
Good. Okay. Are there any other questions of the mover?
Well, no, but I did want to ask if anyone is here from transportation. No,
I think we wore them out this morning.
okay. Just want to know if they think they can do this.
My understanding is they believe they can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's what I'm here.
You must have had a briefing.
No, I emailed somebody. Okay, well, so does anybody have questions of staff? Sure.
This is something that you think you could do?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do believe we can do this.
Okay, thank you.
So, but these signs are ordered as required. You're not going to print a whole bunch of signs in advance and display them in the store, correct? Or you're going to print some?
My understanding is that they would be printed as required. It's more of an order base versus having an inventory of these signs. So people can come in, identify exactly what sign they would like. There'd be a period of time for fabrication, and then it would be delivered to the store.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Were you offering to store them in your office? Okay. Okay, speakers. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to come to your committee and speak on this. But I have worked with and discussed this with Transportation Services and staff. It's not emotional. So I just think this is a good win, an easy thing for us to do. We have lots of laneway naming ceremonies, and not everyone in the family can get a little souvenir of the memory of their relative, who in most cases is passed on. So it's an easy thing to do, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yep. The committee, speakers? Seeing none? Somebody needs to move the recommendations. Councillor Cole?
As I move the recommendation, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Davis. Yep. So Councillor Davis's amendment's on the screen. Councillor Cole's moving the recommendations.
I'm moving the recommendation as amended, and just anecdotally to say that I know in my ward with Reggae Lane that has been in demand, and many people have asked to purchase a similar replica official Toronto Laneway sign.
Excellent. All in favor of the item as amended? Carried. So we're going back to the top of the agenda. Item number 2, 1900 Dundas Street West, designation of a portion of the premises as a municipal capital facility. It was held by Councillor Crisanti. Councillor Crisanti, do you have questions of staff?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It says here in the report that the lease is currently under review, or has it been finalized?
The lease is still being worked on. We're still negotiating this with the landlord.
And we've been leasing this property now for how long?
I believe it goes back to renewals, so approximately a decade at least.
About 10 years. And at what cost per year?
It's $310,000 net per year, and then there's additional rent of $321,000 per year. So total gross of $631,000 a year. That works out to $24.50 a square foot.
And this is a 25,000 square foot facility?
That's right.
Has there been any consideration to see if there's any possibility of relocating this at one of our city-owned sites, or do we have anything that can accommodate?
Yes, we've looked in the area for other possibilities in terms of both city property and potentially different landlords. And we've had discussions with Tess, and this is very much so directed at the public in the area. So we have to make sure that we're within that catchment area to be able to deliver the service.
Is there a hub?
We have been looking at it.
Yeah, is there a hub or community center or something close by that might be able to accommodate this?
Offhand, I'm not aware of that, but my staff may be more in tune with what also is in the area. But nothing big enough right now to, I'll say, consolidate with a city property.
And what will the term of this, oh, here it is, it'll be a 5-year term?
5 years.
With further options?
I believe it was just this 5-year period.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can move the recommendations, or?
Are there other questions of staff? Okay, and sorry, just to clarify, Toronto Employment Social Services have been in this building since 1993.
Oh,
thank you, Councillor.
More than a decade.
Yep. Okay, all in favor of the recommendations? Carried. We're on to item number 3. 2340 Dundas Street West, designation of a portion of the premises as a municipal capital facility. Councillor Crisanti.
So my questions are very similar. So again, are you doing the same due diligence to see if this particular facility could be, since it's a smaller one, particularly that it's less than half the size of the last one, maybe we can accommodate this within an existing city facility and save our lease?
Yes, we have been looking. The other thing on this one, I believe there's a lot of infrastructure that's in place to be able to provide for the service. And so the cost of moving is also a factor in our business case. So we have been looking as to how we can potentially save not only costs on lease payments, but also consolidate into city space and be able to produce taxes out of this location. But at this point, we haven't been able to find another option.
And this will be another 5-year commitment?
Yes. We're only doing 5 years in both of these instances because we continue to look for other opportunities.
So what happens if you find something in a year or 2 from now that you feel is suitable to accommodate this facility then?
Well, usually what would happen is if we find something in a year or 2, it usually takes us a while to deal with design and a move. So it can take up to 2 to 3 years to be able to orchestrate all of that. And then if we do move them out, then we may have opportunity to use the space for other purposes for the subsequent 2 years. So it's difficult to time it exactly. So we just look for what's the long-term win, if you want to say.
Okay. Has this property ever been available for purchase?
No, it's part of a much larger complex of 2 apartment buildings and a shopping center.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can move these recommendations if no one else.
Are there any other questions of staff on this item? Councillor Davis.
So there is a net savings on taxes because we waive the provincial education portion. Is that right?
I'm going.
There's an actual.
Yeah, basically, the city portion.
We waive the city portion, so we have to waive our revenue. What would have been.
Normally, what would happen is the landlord would pay the taxes. But a portion of that goes to the school board. So
right.
It's the school board portion that we would save on.
Right, so it's netted
out.
Out.
Yes. So the landlord would not have to pay that tax anymore.
Okay. Councillor Cole, do you have any questions of staff? Since you're only the one. Okay, seeing none. Councillor Crisanti is moving the recommendations. All in favor of the recommendations? Carried. Our last item, GM 17.8, additional reporting on contracts awarded during the 2016 summer recess period, and is held by Councillor Davis. Councillor Davis, do you have questions of staff? Yes.
Okay. My question has to do with, this is a really large contract, and I understand the reason it's here is because you missed the deadline or somebody put it onto the bid committee and council still was sitting so that it could have come to committee. But it also is a huge contract that provides for electrical services for the City of Toronto for our facilities. Is it just facilities? It's not hydro or any of our agencies? Do you know?
Through the chair, this is just for facilities.
Is Josie here? No. Okay. So it's just for facilities. And yet, is this the only contract we have for facilities for electrical services, or is this like the granddaddy of them all, or is there only one service provider for all of the electricians?
Unfortunately, Josie and Sunil had to go to a workshop.
But
I don't know. I don't know if Mike knows.
I don't have a lot of detail, but I do know that there are other site-specific calls that sometimes go out for facilities for electrical similar services.
Yeah, through the chair, there are multiple electrical services contracts. This is not the only one. There are a few others.
So could you ballpark what percentage this would be of the total electrical services that we contract out for facilities?
Just off the top of my head, this is probably one of the largest ones that we have. Well, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers.
Like 80%?
I would say 80% is a reasonable number, yeah.
Okay. So the reason I ask is that we are, and I know you will expect this, Mr. Patchlock, and it has to do with the social procurement policy that we've passed. Electricians, I assume this is hiring electricians to do probably some specialized work, but also some regular work. Maybe I'll just ask facilities.
Through the chair, there are a few trades electricians on staff, but right. This is some of the more, like you said, specialized work and larger work that happens throughout the facilities around the city.
Okay. So what I want to know is if we're moving towards a social procurement process where we want to try and allow for local, normally excluded contractors, why we wouldn't break up something like the electrical work for facilities to allow smaller contractors to be able to bid and be successful. This is such a huge contract.
Through the chair, so the way the social procurement policy works is that every year moving forward, we're going to be reviewing all the contracts that are going to be over $5 million in value. So this type of contract would fall into that initial bucket. And then we'll assess whether it makes sense for workforce development opportunities to be built in. We might also determine that there are reasons why we might break up the contract, but if it's highly specialized work, we'll have to manage that against the contractors that are out there that could do the work to the safety standards that we require. It's a constant review of looking at things. And one of the other things purchasing and materials management is trying to implement is category management and strategic sourcing, which would also look at the marketplace and determine whether it makes more sense to bundle contracts together or break them apart depending on risk profiles, and ensuring that we're getting better value and achieving goals of the various procurement policies that Council has set for us.
And so the answer is that we will be looking to provide opportunities for local contractors who may be smaller to provide electrical services in the City of Toronto in the future.
Through the chair, social procurement policy isn't about local contractors. It's about trying to get at workforce development opportunities. But through another exercise, category management, it may lead to, not just in this contract, but in other contracts, where we decide that it makes more sense to parse them out more so we can have more competition or reduce risk of having only one contract.
So maybe I'll ask specifically about workforce development then. So will there be conditions of any kind on this $25 million contract for workforce development and hiring young people in the City of Toronto who may be, apprentices or new electricians?
Through the chair, not on this contract as it was issued prior to the social. It was just issued as the social procurement policy was adopted, so it was too early. So the next time around, it will be considered.
So if this is 80% of the electrical work for all of our facilities, how long is the term?
5 years.
So we won't be able to look at any workforce development for 5 more years.
Up to 5 years.
It's 1 year with 4 extensions, up to 4 extensions.
Okay. Could you report back at the end of the first year so we can understand whether the extension could be done in a way that incorporates workforce development and the social procurement principles?
I guess that would be up to facilities in part.
That's what we did with the cleaning contract.
With the job quality assessment tool, yes.
Right.
We can take it under advisement to report back on looking at what to do. The issue with the renewal is that it would have to be done in.
Same rate.
Contract was started in August. We would have to report shortly to determine whether we need to go back out to market. If we're going to, like, the contract started August 2016, first year will end July 31st. We'll need to determine, it's currently not on the work plan for procurements.
What about the second year renewal?
Yes.
Counselor, you're over your time. Last question.
We could come back in a second.
Sorry, Counselor, I missed the last part. You'll move that? Okay. She's writing.
General manager. Facilities.
Purchasing.
Purchasing official and the GM? Yes, both. Yes.
Report prior to the second term renewal.
If we're, yes, that would make the most sense. Yep.
Mr. Davis's motion is on the screen. I think we can do this all together. Take it as a package. All in favor? Carried. Opposed? Seeing none. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Crisanti, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone.